Research across 30 countries shows an almost perfect inverse relationship between height and longevity. Now the next question has been answered. Here we go.
So we all know women live longer than men do. We think of men doing risky things, right? Boys will be boys, right? So it's tough to point to one variable about why this is. But there is one variable that has a very strong, almost one-to-one ratio correlation across not just humans, but many species that explain why women live longer: height. In today's Gender Gap, we are going to look at how or why height is the reason why women live longer than men do. Here at Gender Gap Science, we talk about gender gaps that mainstream media and culture do not address. We just think there's more to story than what we are told about gender differences. This one is weird and interesting.
So what is this link between height and how long we live, especially when it comes to women outliving men? You know, it's funny how often we do think bigger is better, but when you look at lifespan, that might not actually be the case. I remember, and this is for another podcast, how men who get really big when it comes to muscles tend to live shorter lives. But height, I never thought being taller would make your life shorter.
Yes. So, research is increasingly suggesting that shorter stature is correlated with longer lifespans. And now, logically, they have investigated if that's why women are outliving men. It turns out the data of height difference matches the lifespan difference between men and women almost in a scary way, really well. What's really interesting is that this isn't just a human thing. We see this pattern across different, species too. Oh.
Really? Across different species? So, wait, are we saying that being tall is actually a disadvantage? I thought taller men had all these advantages. Taller men are assumed to be healthier or more attractive to the opposite gender. Or taller men are more likely to get votes anyway from female voters, to get into political office and so on. Even Hollywood's routine depiction of the American male is much taller than the average American male is, especially in modern-day films.
All of those are true assumptions we make about taller meaning healthier. I think it's not just taller men versus shorter men where these myths exist, but the fact that women are often viewed as weaker and supposedly less healthy even because they are often shorter than men are, so our assumptions are very distorted from reality. While being shorter has been linked to poorer health, especially in impoverished societies. In healthier societies, the studies are finding that within groups, shorter individuals are often outliving their taller counterparts. A bit of a different story.
So just be honest, if you wanted to choose a man, would you go for a taller guy if you knew he was going to, kick the bucket sooner?
Are you asking me seriously? What?
Yeah, I'm not asking the cat here, although I'd be curious about her answer too.
Well, I don't know, to be honest. Here is what I do know. I do know that when I see really muscular men, I keep in mind the studies about how a lot of men, getting too big, too fast with branched amino acids and other compounds you can find very easily, it can and may likely will sadly reduce their life expectancy. But It is true, though, the idea that a taller mate is healthier or will live longer. These studies debunk that myth. It's not true.
Well, I'm skeptical. If these myths are ever going to go away, as long as Hollywood makes the average guy actors who save the day without a bruise in their films be taller and taller giants. I'm reading some of this. We will include these for listeners to read themselves. So there was this study done on Finnish cross-country skiers and basketball players. And guess what? The shorter skiers ended up living almost 7 years longer than the taller basketball players. Sounds kind of weird, however, the pattern continues. The point being that even among athletes, this pattern shows.
7 years. Wow. Okay, then what?
There's more. Another study looked at Italian army soldiers and found that the soldiers who were under 5'4" lived 2 years longer than their taller comrades. They looked at other nation veterans, baseball players. The list goes on. And these studies again have been consistent across 30 different countries. So it's not limited by culture or geographic traits.
Right. So there's been a lot of research comparisons done for decades, but let's get this question out of the way. The one our listeners are thinking of right now. So we see the trend, but why would this be? Why would shorter people live longer? What's the biological reason?
Well, one theory focuses on cellular replication. Basically, taller people need more cell replications to grow and maintain their bodies, right? And that could lead to faster wear and tear at a cellular level.
And that wear and tear could impact how long they live.
So it's kind of like a car with more mileage on. It's been driven further, so it's closer to wearing out.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And if we think about that in terms of men and women, it starts to make sense why women who are generally shorter tend to live longer. So all these, what do they call it, height maxing about men wanting to be taller could actually be hinting at a real disadvantage when it comes to living a long life. I wonder if they're aware of these studies. It's like when smoking was cool, right? This study in Italy a few decades ago, right? It showed how women weren't allowed to smoke because smoking was only for men, but they wanted to in order to be like men, but smoking was only for manly men until we found out about lung cancer. So like it overwhelmingly afflicted the manly men who were smoking, and then the women were happy they weren't cool enough to be permitted to smoke when they were younger.
Ha! Yeah, I highly doubt it. That these height-maxing men are aware of their advantages of being short. They should talk to those Italian women. They have a lot in common. So, it's not just height itself. It's also about hormonal differences between men and women. Men usually have higher levels of growth hormone, which of course helps them grow taller. But those same hormones might actually be contributing to a shorter lifespan.
Wow, this is really making me rethink that whole bigger is better saying.
It really challenges those assumptions, doesn't it? And this whole smaller, lives longer idea goes beyond humans too. There have been studies showing that smaller dogs within a breed tend to outlive the larger dogs, smaller monkeys, and the list goes on.
But smaller dogs typically live longer than larger breeds. That's true.
And it's not just dogs. They've observed this pattern in mice, horses, and various other species. Check this out. When females of a species are larger than males, they actually have higher mortality rates than their smaller counterparts. Crazy.
That's so weird. I think I've been lied to my whole life now. Not just the height-maxing boys. Why don't we learn about weird things like this in school so we can be more grounded? I am going to join the height-maxing boys and the Italian women for a healthy picnic where we eat organic carrots.
So, does this mean that everyone who's shorter is destined to live longer? And what about men who are short and women? So this means there will be less of a gap between their lifespans compared to a guy who's tall and the typical woman?
When it comes to shorter is the only key to living longer. There are lots of other things that influence longevity like genetics, lifestyle choices, and overall health. However, shorter men have a more similar lifespan to women and don't kick the bucket as quickly as their taller bros.
Yeah, there was this one study that really stood out to me. It found that on average, men were 8% taller than women.
Let me guess, men also had an 8% shorter lifespan?
You got it. It's a pretty striking correlation, don't you think? It suggests that height could be a significant factor in the difference between how long men and women live. So we need to be looking beyond just height and consider all the different factors that are at play.
Exactly, and there are a lot of other interesting differences between men and women that could be contributing to this lifespan gap.
Like what kinds of differences?
Well, for starters, men are statistically more likely to engage in risky behaviors. They're also, unfortunately, dying at younger ages. And get this, men are 80% more at risk for heart disease compared to women. It's also true that the gap in life expectancy between the sexes is widening. Men are dying younger and younger compared to women in recent years. Maybe it's time men started doing yoga, ballet, drinking red wine instead, and add some candlelight baths. I'm just saying, men out there.
Yeah, that stat about men being 80% more at risk for heart disease, that was pretty crazy. What's the deal with that?
Honestly, that's another podcast. It's pretty insane. It's a fairly recent phenomenon. Young male mortality rates.
For sure. And speaking of context, let's go back to something we were talking about earlier. Remember that idea of taller people, like maybe experiencing more wear and tear at the cellular level because they need more cell replication to grow?
Yeah, like their cells have more mileage on them.
So, let's talk about telomeres.
Telomeres, my favorite. Those are like the protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes. You can think of them like the little plastic tips on your shoelaces. They keep the laces from fraying. Every time a cell divides, its telomeres get a bit shorter. So as we age, our telomeres just keep getting smaller and smaller.
That's the gist of it. And when they get too short, the cell can't divide properly anymore, and then it might die or just stop working right.
So could having shorter telomeres be a sign that someone's aging faster?
That's what researchers are looking into, and some studies have actually suggested that being shorter are linked to having longer telomeres.
Wait, are you saying that shorter people could have younger cells?
Shorter people have longer telomeres. Again, think of them like protective caps on our DNA. And they experience less DNA damage overall. Plus, their organs are actually larger relative to their body size, which means better functional capacity.
Okay, so we've got height, hormones, telomeres, lifestyle choices, social factors. So, like you said, if telomeres get too shortened, then the cell may not replicate correctly. That could lead to something terminal. I don't want to think about this, but I do at the same time. So,
you know, there are plenty of tall women who live long, healthy lives and plenty of shorter men who face health challenges. We all know this. It's just that there is more to the story about why women live longer than men, other than men play with guns or some other similarly risky male behavior.
But what about what can people, actually do to protect their telomeres, to support healthy cellular aging?
That's the top question. Lifestyle choices can have a real impact on telomere length. Things like being stressed out all the time, smoking, eating poorly, and not getting enough exercise have all been linked to shorter telomeres. But also protection from environmental toxins. We need to drink clean water, chemical-free food, only take medicines that are safe for us to actually take. The basic things. And of course, I'm optimistic we will discover more about telomeres. Your favorite subject.
So if you want to keep those telomeres long and strong, you got to manage your stress, ditch cigarettes, eat your veggies, and get moving. And listen to our next podcast when we discuss genetics at a greater length. Like, epigenetics in particular is the hot topic for sure. It's also about how we take care of our minds. I need to get one of those back massage chairs and a few lavender candles, personally. And actually, this brings us to another really fascinating area of research that's merging around cellular energy. It's basically about how efficiently our cells are able to produce and use energy. And this all happens in these tiny structures within our cells called mitochondria.
Mitochondria, the, little powerhouses of the cell?
You got it. Think of them like tiny little batteries that keep everything running smoothly. And it turns out that the health of our mitochondria is super important when it comes to aging and longevity.
And there are things we can do to support them. One big one is exercise. Regular physical activity has actually been shown to increase the number and efficiency of mitochondria in our cells.
In other words, I'm hitting the gym after this. Telomeres, mitochondria. Being tall or short, where is my salad at? Mitochondria are really big fans of antioxidants. They help protect them from damage caused by free radicals. Loading up on colorful produce, as long as they are not colorful because of petroleum-based food dyes, that is a great way to give your mitochondria all the love they need. Like So how about those leg surgeries, men, where they break their legs to become taller? Maybe they should listen to this podcast. Those surgeries are like over $100,000, and you break your legs for over a year?
Yeah, last time I used the phrase break a leg after seeing that.
I got a new phrase. Ready? So no matter how tall you are, healthy habits can give you a leg up when it comes to longevity.
With a leg up, you can also take a positive step to benefit your overall well-being.
All right, we need to stop with the height-maxing boys puns. This one is also a weird fact. Researchers even suggest that our current trajectory of increasing height and thus body mass is contributing to rising healthcare costs. Well, hopefully nobody got too traumatized by this podcast. I certainly did. I'm not sure if I should be a taller girl or a shorter one. Men are even more confused. And that's how we do it here at Gender Gap Science. Check out one of our other videos on gender gaps. They will always be ones you likely have not heard of because, listeners, that's how we like it. Goodbye.